they used the word sheiks or trustees. That was crossed out and the word sheiks was put in. Also, with this affidavit is a confirmation of the Moorish Science Temple being a religious corporation. And we're going to go into exactly what the religious corporation is. So to confirm what the religious corporation is, we're going to go to our Moorish literature. We're going to go to Moorish Leaders' Historical Message to America. And we're going to go to page 18. And I'm going to start from the last paragraph where it says we organize. It says we organize as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year of 1925 and were legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of Illinois, November 29, 1926. The name Moorish Temple of Science was changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America, May 1928, in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of the State of Illinois. The object of our organization is to help in the great program of uplifting fallen humanity and teach those things necessary to make our members better citizens. A national organization with Rotarian complexion as it relates to branch temples became obvious in the increasing numbers of inquiries from men and women in different sections of the country concerning the purpose of the organization. There are branch temples in 15 different states at this time. Since the work of the Moorish Science Temple of America was largely religious, the organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation, and an affidavit to this effect has been properly filed in the Cook County Recorder's Office of Illinois. So that section right there explains how, it basically explains the authority that you find on the back of your questionnaire. Specifically, that this is a religious corporation, and also that an affidavit was filed. So, one of the things that this does is this puts you in accordance with a law, that law being the Religious Corporations Act. This is what Prophet Noble Drew Ali did. So, I would like to read a section from the Resurrection book by Timothy Dingle Hill, where he speaks about that particular thing in reference to how the society was formed. And then from there, we're going to get into the specific specifications of it. So page 22 of the Resurrection book, it says, introduction, brief information on how the Honorable Noble Drew incorporated his movement, his Moorish movement in America. Then it goes on to say, Noble Drew Ali founded his movement in 1913 in the city of Newark, New Jersey. He named his movement Moorish Holy Temple of Science. He wanted his movement incorporated, but the laws in Newark didn't suit that purpose. Drew Ali moved his movement to Chicago, Illinois. The laws there were more suitable. Drew Ali discovered a law in the Chicago Records, chapters 32 and 36 of her revised statute on religious corporations, paragraphs 164 and 165. In 1926, he formed his corporation according to that law. What made the chapter so important? Four very important words was involved, which are church, society, congregation, and adoption. Out of the four words, the Honorable Drew Ali used two for his legal foundation. Drew Ali wanted his movement to be civic. He used the word that would be more appropriate, which is society. The Honorable Ali knew that out from the word society, a government or nation could be born. The Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, 31st chapter, subject justice. And when we go there, to that chapter, the 31st chapter, the very first verse, it will speak on it on page 40. Holy instructions from the prophet justice. The peace of society depended on justice. The happiness of individuals on the safe enjoyment of all their possessions. So right there, that speaks on society. Now, why is this important? Because when you review the Religious Corporation Act, you'll find exactly how our society was formed. So I would like for us, but I'll go into these sections right here. Since we're going into society, I'm going to dwell into the legal term of society, Islam. And I'm going into Black's Law Dictionary just for the purpose of giving a context of that. And if you have a Black's Law, it's on page 1562.
1662?
1562.
1562.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this just gives you a legal definition. I'll be referring to this throughout the class, just to give legal terms, to give a legal aspect of it. And it says society, an association or company of persons, generally unincorporated, united together by mutual consent in order to deliberate, determine, and act jointly for some common purpose. In a wider sense, the common or public, the people in general. Civil society, usually a state, nation, or body politic. So, body politic. So society brings you into body politic. And the Religious Corporation Act speaks about body politic. So, if I were to go to the definition of body politic, which is on page 222. 222, yes. And it gives you the definition of body politic. It will say body politic or corporate. It will say a social compact by which the whole people covenants with each citizen, and each citizen with the whole people, that all shall be governed by certain laws for the common good. Right? And then later on in the next paragraph, it says state or nation or public association. So as you see, when we talk about society, body politic, all these things, it brings you back to nation. Right? Which again confirms what was written in the Resurrection book, where it says, out of society, a government and a nation could be born. Right? So, when we refer to how the prophet spoke of us under the nation, we can go to our Moorish Holy Quran, the 48th chapter, on page 59. So on that page, it speaks specifically on verse 6. It says the following: we as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. On page 60, verse 9, it says, the covenant of the great God Allah. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given you. And it concludes by saying, come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift all of humanity. We honor all. Come and link yourselves with the family of nations. We honor all the true and divine prophets. Right? So in our lessons, in our questionnaire, the question is asked, for what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? For the uplifting of all humanity. So that being the purpose, that being the purpose of our society, uplifting all the humanity, that can only be done by following certain laws. And the first law that we set forth is our Constitution, our divine Constitution and bylaws. And give honors to Sister Wilhelmina Beck for speaking on that. Every time she reads here, she always says that we are to go by divine law. Divine law is above man-made law, right? And today she specified about Act 6. And Act 6 says the following. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and a partial of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores. This act right here specifically deals with our identity, our nationality, ties us to our nation. Right? And that's important, because in order to get back to where we rightfully ought to be as a society, right, to have our own, we need to establish who we are. Because in terms of Negro, black, colored, African American, etc., do not tie you to a land. It doesn't tie you to a history. It doesn't tie you to a culture, a heritage. It doesn't tell you who you truly are. So it has you spinning in wheels. Nationality determines political status, right? That's why it was important when Noble Drew Ali founded the Moorish Science Temple of America that he put this into law. And it's through this law that we're recognized by all nations of the world, right? That is the matter at hand, the laws of society. Also, it ties us back to religious freedom, okay? So, the question I'm just gonna pose, where do we have religious freedom?
Where do we have?
Where in the laws of the land do we have religious freedom? First Amendment,
Right,
of the Constitution, right? So, reading First Amendment of the Constitution, it says the following. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, I want to write a couple of things down.
It's in the Black Law Dictionary, right? Says where? Religious freedom.
Religious freedom, yes.
Okay. Awesome.
If y'all cannot read this right, and I apologize, this is my best work. Religious freedom. All right, so religious freedom, of course, that connects with something called ecclesiastic. Ecclesiastic law. So, ecclesiastic. Does anybody know what the term ecclesiastics means? Okay. Ecclesiastics comes from this word, ecclesia. Ecclesiastes is a book in the Bible, right? It comes from this. This is a Latin word, and it actually is a law word, ecclesia.
Is it like a tribunal law?
Close. Ecclesia means assembly, right? So it means assembly. So the assembly here is basically this. My man. Assembly. So in the Constitution, you have religious freedom, and you also have the freedom of assembly, which is technically the same thing. They'll tell you that ecclesiastics are pertaining to religious church. But the term church, if you look up the church, let's say in the book of Revelations, in the Greek, it would be ecclesia. So it's really saying assembly. So if it says the 7 churches, it's saying the 7 assemblies, right? So by law, any religious place, any place of worship, right? That term when 3 or more are gathered in my name, right? That concept comes from ecclesia. So it's a temple, synagogue, mosque, anything where people gather under to worship their God. So by law, we're protected. Okay, so if you have religious freedom, First Amendment, First Amendment, First Amendment, Constitution, right? That takes you to this point. When you have religious freedom, Constitution, Assembly, then it goes down to press. Speech. Because any public speech is also connected with press. Now, what did the prophet give us for press? Well, the Moorish God. right? Assembly is the temple. Right? Putting this. Religious freedom, that's Islamism. What is our religion?
Islamism.
Right? So, through our religion, Islamism, we establish a temple. And as a temple, we can assemble and speak and propagate the faith. And we propagate it through one of the ways, through our press. Right?
That's right.
So the prophet was demonstrating the First Amendment all throughout. Now, this is important. Why is this important? Because in order for you to proclaim your nationality, proclaim means to what? Make known.
Mm-hmm.
What was one of the most effective ways he made it known was through the press. It was published every Friday, the Moorish Guide, which is our holy day.
Yes, sir.
So he made it known everywhere that there were people who proclaimed themselves as Moorish Americans. This is who we are. This is where we located. This is what we believe, right? And then he pushed it further by registering Moorish Americans under a free national ballot in order to exercise their nationality. And by that, they were able to put the first Asiatic in Congress since Reconstruction by the name of Oscar the Priest. So he covered the religious side, the media, and politics.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
He also dealt with the economics. How did he do that? Because he had each temple, he mandated that each temple have at least 2 businesses. Right? Some of them had 3 businesses, like Detroit. Had 2 groceries and a laundromat. Right? So all these things were coming through. He was about to take it to the level where we were going to have our own town. So I want to read from this book by Sheikh Azim Hopkins Bey, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Savior of Humanity, where he speaks about that. So I'm going to talk about, these were actual articles that was in the Moorish Guide. He says here, in addition to the many divine endeavors, there was also a plan to establish a Moorish town owned and operated by Moorish Americans. The Moorish Guide reported, Friday, November 30th, 1928. Notice to all Moors, write a letter to the Supreme Business Manager, 3140 Indiana Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, and let him know what you think of Moors having their own town, own mayor, alderman, chief of police, judges, city hall, own temples, own lands, own houses, own parks, and own business establishments. And that was published on November 30th, 1928. Friday, February 1st, 1929, is the following. Moors endorsed village idea. The following letter is one of many received by the guide relative to the establishment of a town owned and completely operated by those persons belonging to the Moorish Science Temple of America. Date January 29th, 1929. Islam. In response to the questions asked concerning the Moors having a town, homes, etc., we will say all honor to the Prophet, who is going to give us something of our own. And we all are going to do all in our power to help build the Moorish Science Temple of America so that we can have something of our own. Peace. Signed, brothers E.N.D. Jackson Bay, Sister J. Jackson Bay, Chicago, Illinois.
Yes, man.
So this was something that was going on back then, right? This is the work that was successive of the work of our harbinger, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, right? Who also taught about economic empowerment, right? So it's hand in hand. So with that, in order to have a community and a town, you got to have laws. You have to have what they call law and order, right? So throughout the Moorish literature, which the Moorish literature is nothing more than a collection of some of the articles that were in the Moorish Guide. So every one of the articles in the Moorish literature was once in the Moorish Guide when it was published. So, for example, since we're dealing with laws of society, on page 15, it has general laws as said by the prophet, Tuesday, October 17, 1928. It says the following. Every temple, every temple and head is to function by words, deeds, and actions imitating the prophet, especially when teaching a group of Moors, any group of Moors. These are the general laws. The supreme laws will be handed to you later. The heads of all temples are to submit a report monthly of all finance. The heads of all temples are to refrain from all wrathful words, profanity in the mildest form, from all the members of his or her temple. They must live the life of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and refrain from all alcoholic liquors or any other harmful possibility that will terminate to destroy peace or any other of the divine principles. They are not to contribute to anything that will cause the public to disagree with him or her. And for one to lead a group of Moors, you must keep your house clean. Clean with good deeds, kind words. Your wives, brothers must hear good words, kind words, and must know of your good deeds. If there are children, you must see to their support. Follow this divine principle, for if you don't restrict to this divine principle, then you are not a true Moor. And the heads are not to charge for membership.
Yes, man.
Or to overcharge for cards, buttons, or for anything issued by the prophet. Those who contribute to either of the preceding are not Moors, but robbers.
Yes, man.
Membership, sisters and brothers, is free, not only here, but all over the world.
Islam.
The button is 25 cents, card 25 cents, and 1 month's dues is paid. Every member pays 50 cents a month for dues. This money goes towards the support of the temple. And we're keeping this in mind. This is the money at that time, at that value. So we know in 2019 it would be more. But just to give you a concept. This, if not paid, does not entitle you to the protection that is provided for you. And especially if you are not working or in the position to work. If you neglect to fulfill this small duty assigned you, how can you rightfully expect money or other help when you are sick or otherwise disabled? Right? We can attest, the Sheiks can attest many times to people who felt entitled to things when they did not contribute. And sometimes it's not, people may not have the money. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's about your time and your energy and your love. Right? That carries a long way. And it goes on to say, and to be a real Moorish leader, you must study the Quran and the divine constitution that is handed down unto you by I, the prophet. the head of any temple can maintain an emergency fund which cannot exceed the amount of from 25 cents to 50 cents a week per member. All public collections and dues also go to the support of the temple and its domestic work. The head of every temple must, by law, obey the word of the prophet. And if any head leader or head of any temple fails to obey these laws, embezzlement is discharged and is subject to the enforcement of the law by the grand body. And the penalty may be a fine or removal from office or placed under a heavy restriction of the law. Supreme words of the prophet, noble duality. So this demonstration here by the prophet lets it be known what is required of us, not just general members, but specifically heads of the temple, right? As Grand Governor will always say, we as sheep are held to a higher standard, right? We are all held to a higher standard under the eyes of Allah, but being that we taken this task to actually minister these teachings of the prophet, we are the direct representatives of the prophet. So we have to be on point. And that just goes without saying. That goes back to what Assistant Grant spoke about earlier in chapter, was it 4, right? Chapter 4, he spoke about that block of wood that can point, right? You know, you point the way, you don't go there, a block of wood can do the same. So we have to be more than that block of wood. We have to be the block of grain, right? It's because men love to follow, not lead. So they need an example. Men need a pattern to follow. Male and female, men and women need patterns to follow. So you need a strong pattern. If you're a man of a strong man who holds up those principles, same thing with a young Moabitess needs an image of a strong Moabitess who holds up to those principles. But you're only going to go based on what you see, hear, etc. Exercise your 5 senses if you are able to do so. So these are terms and realizations of what laws of society do for us. It keeps us in order. A nation, by definition of law, is a group of people existing in the form of an organized drill society, right? Organized drill society. That means a society that is founded in law. Drill means founded in law. So the Constitution is the law by which we are founded in. If we do not stay in accordance to law, then we cannot be respected as a society. So when we see Moors, like she, Winnell spoke about Moors who don't follow the law and they make themselves known in public, it causes us to be judged as a society based on those bad examples, right? So if you find Moors that are about, they just want to drive without license, they just want to joke on the government, not do what they do, they want to sell and smoke marijuana and say that this is somehow not, they're in their own jurisdiction, so they're above the law, anything. When you have that demonstration and it gets on the news, right, then those who are unlearned, they will see everybody. When you say you're more, oh, you sovereign, you do that, right? You'll even have certain people who want to get into that type of get over lifestyle and try to come to you thinking that you're down with that, right? I'm sure we've all experienced that. Oh yeah, you know, I'm trying to not pay no tickets. You know, how can you do that? Because So we have to set the example and draw that line, right? And we can only do that with laws. Go according to law, as Assistant Grant always speaks about. Because law governs all events. So as long as we can follow that law, we'll be all right. I do want to touch on a couple other things. I want to touch on this aspect pertaining to body politic, and then from there I will open up for any questions and comments at the time. So we spoke about body politic. This is what I'm going to read is an excerpt from Harvard Law Review. This was actually published in January 25th of 1899. And it's speaking in reference to the United States Constitution, but it uses the term of body politic. So this is on page 368. In the bottom paragraph, it says the following. It says, secondly, since the adoption of the Constitution, the term United States has been the name of a sovereign, and that sovereign occupies a position analogous to that of the personal sovereign of most European countries. Indeed, the analogy between them is closer, at least in one respect, that at first sight appears. For a natural person who is also a sovereign has two personalities, one natural, the other artificial and legal. And it is the latter that is sovereign. I'm going to repeat that. Two personalities. One natural, a natural personality, the other artificial and legal. And it is the latter that is sovereign. It is as true, therefore, of England, for example, as it is of this country, that her sovereign is an artificial and legal person, i.e., a body politic in corporate, and therefore never dies. The difference between the two sovereigns is that while the former consists of a single person, the latter consists of many persons, each of whom is a member of the body politic. In short, while the former is a corporation sole, the latter is a corporation aggregate. So here in this law review is speaking of the body politic as a sovereign, which deals with not a sovereign as an individual or a sovereign citizen, but sovereign as a collective or popular sovereignty, meaning that the collective of the body of society, right, is empowered to make its own laws. What did the prophet say? Right? Act 1. The Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the members of the Moorish Temple of America. So what that means is simply this. You have what's called, as I mentioned, ecclesiastical jurisdiction. So that means that we, the leaders of the temple, can judge over matters, ecclesiastical matters of the temple, of the society, because there's a separation between church and state. The government of this country can't get involved with how we run our affairs within our society, provided we don't violate the Constitution of this land. Meaning we don't kill anybody or things of that nature. That's a given if we follow the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. That's a given. If you're going to follow the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, you're not going to be a law breaker. You're going to be a law-abiding citizen. And that's what makes the difference between a true Moor, as the prophet talked about, true Moorish American Muslim, and those who have the semblance of truth, who pretend to be that, who will put on the appearance of it, but don't follow law, right? So with that, we can build a nation. So with that, I yield the floor to any questions, comments, anything. Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
But so as a Moorish American in this society, we have stuff that we follow. Like for example, we used to Europeans abortion law, for instance. They're making it illegal for abortion. Not to say that abortion is right, but it should be a woman's choice depending on whether she goes to, not somebody else telling her.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're using their facility, and let's say a sister who happens to be an upright sister, and she's, Moorish, she wants to have an abortion and the doctor turns her away, she can stand on her right, can she, there's like a blurred line because they put this into law, but it doesn't go with what we do. And if
Right.
they turn us away, can you sue? Can you fight it? Can you?
That's a good question, because it falls both ways. It may be, let's say it's her religion. Let's use the hypothesis that somehow, some way, within her religious belief, she believes that she is entitled to have that done.
Well, let's say she was molested or whatever.
It's whatever the reason,
Yeah, okay.
whatever the reason. Because you're talking about religious freedom, right?
Mhm.
Let's say for whatever reason she believes it's her right to have that done. You also have the doctor who also can push that it is his religious conviction, right? That he can't do that. That's been the thing that they've been putting out. That if a practitioner of medicine has a religious conviction against doing a particular surgery procedure, that they can't be forced to do it. So go ahead.
Okay, so then that poses as a problem, but then that also goes into, well, if you're a Muslim, and because to me what the law does now is make doctors, it makes them kind of like they have authority to basically, if they want to help you or not help you, that law that they pass gives them the right, based on if they want to throw that religious freedom out, say, hey, I don't like this person because they're Muslim, or Muslim because they're bad people.
Well, that
happens
you can fight that. You can't be discriminated against because of your religion.
But this law, because their religious freedom is kind of like a criminal line. And if you take it to an ecclesiastic law, how do you, because now you're talking about two religions. And now you go, and if they go to court, they're gonna, each one has the right to not do something, or, do something, but it'll endanger one person or hurt one person. Because,
Well, I was just gonna say, in most cases, it's the third party. Third party is the state. So with this particular issue, a lot of it's gonna fall with the state. You know what I'm saying? However, they did it. They used majority rule, and so they passed it. That's how they passed it in Alabama and some of these other states. So that's the third party. So it's not just like one person against one person. It's the state too, in that sense. So the state can pass the law. In that particular state. So the only redress, and that goes back to the First Amendment, that you can petition the government for redress, grievance. That's what the individual would have to do in that case.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're gonna have to take it to court. That's just because the state is involved. The state is the third party. In this case, if we're talking about the state is the one putting that forth.
I just want to add on to when you gave, when you were talking about the immediately my mind went to how, like the Amish and the
Yes.
Mormons operate.
Yes.
However, when you see them have conflicts, it's at the state level, it's not at the federal level. So you'll always see, like with the Mormons, polygamy and child bride, but that's a conflict at the state level, not at the federal level. So when you get into civil relations, a lot of times it's governed at the state level. And from my understanding, it was always understood that the Moorish signing symbol was supposed to, that's where the part and partial comes in, you're supposed to function as ecclesiastic, under ecclesiastical law, as ecclesiastic, and being your own state within that federation, and then you could govern yourself. Because really, to me, what it looks like is like the states use their religious freedom under the guise intertwined with politics, right? The people use their religious beliefs to push that law. Which, unfortunately, women do get the short end of the stick, but at all things being equal, they were using the law at their, disposal. So how they used it may have been correct, but the use of it felt, well, I view it wasn't incorrect. It's more that we don't use it that way, so we tend to get the short end of the stick, which is why my understanding of the prophet of Durham was trying to get us into politics so that we can have a voice amongst the men and not give them one.
I'm glad.
It's a great question.
Yeah, definitely a great question, and I'm glad this illustration, Sister Fatima, what you said brings to something that I wanted to talk on. I'll talk on it now. Was because I mentioned about the town. I was having also what religious freedom offers us to do is to create our own institutions, such as our own hospitals, schools, etc., which is what we should strive towards at some point in time. Because, for example, those who say that they are Jews, they have their hospitals, right, which understand the religious laws of that society and go accordingly. They're going to be favorable. So someone who's of the Judaic faith goes to that hospital, they're dealing with somebody who's either of the Judaic faith or has been trained to be respectful of that person's faith. That's what we're supposed to be striving towards as a nation of people, to have our own. But in the meantime, our best defense, as what Grant Governor said, is to operate under the First Amendment, and if all else fails, we have the right to petition for redress. But that's basically in terms of society. Society has all aspects of life covered: economics, politics, media, education, health, you name it. We cover that. And that's what nationality does for us. Nationality gives us that base by which we can build. So I just wanted to say that. Any other questions, any other thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, expound on the 7 churches again, Mo. I think, but churches in what society too, or ain't church society?
Yeah, it can be viewed as society.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was just basically going based off the etymology of the word, because if you look in the Greek, it'll be ecclesia. So it literally means assembly. But yeah, it actually can be related to a society, each one. Absolutely.
I have a question. You read out of the law review?
Yes.
About the natural person and the artificial and legal person. Just to clarify, it is saying that as a natural person, natural born person, individual, you cannot be sovereign by yourself. You must be sovereign within, going back to the body politic, an assembly, meeting.
Yes.
Oh, that's not
Yes. We here, our sovereignty rest in being part of the body politic. Yes, absolutely.
And that, who was that? Was it related to a review, a legal precedent that you read it from?
Yeah, so absolutely, great question. So the title of it is The Status of Our New Territory. So this was, keep in mind, this is in 1899. So during that time, they were dealing with the aspect of acquiring new states and territories. And then I don't know specifically which ones. You know, they talk about the state of New York, but New York was already, I only have a couple of pages on it, but it was specifying about the aspect of, it says the first question is asked here, what extent of territory do the United States of America comprise? That's the question that they address. And then it says, in order to answer this question intelligently, it is necessary to ascertain the meaning of the term United States. And then it goes into the whole aspect of what does it mean to be the United States.
Thank you.
So if the United States is a sovereign country, because they're not native to the land, right? Would that be a correct statement?
Right. So they're saying from a legal aspect of how it's constructed.
Okay.
Right. So we know the people who run it are not native to the land. We know that.
So they're considered. So the United States is considered a sovereign nation. So I guess, and this is just, I'm just going to throw it out there. So the Moors that do the sovereignty, they're following European, right? I know they're not following what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
But it just seems kind of crazy if they're following what the European Israeli sovereign is doing, and how the European kind of goes after whenever that's wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're out of order by not following what the law has laid out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's out of order, but I just thought it was kind of crazy. They're following the European, and the European goes after them for following them.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So that goes back to what it says in our Moorish Holy Quran in chapter 47 about straying after the gods of Europe, of whom we know nothing.
That's right.
Because they're going after this idea of sovereignty, and they don't really know what sovereignty is in law and how it affects certain things, right? I'll give you a perfect case in point. They'll say something like, I'm going to submit my affidavit. And we just spoke about an affidavit that the prophet submitted, filed in the Cook County of Cook. But what they don't talk about is the fact that on the bottom of the affidavit, there's a notary public. It has to be notarized. In order for an affidavit to be valid, it must be notarized by a notary public, right? You can't get your cousin to sign it off or anything like that. It has to be a notary public, registered. And also, affidavit is a statement of facts, right? The affidavit itself doesn't necessarily move a court to do anything. I'm not saying it doesn't have validity. I'm saying it doesn't necessarily move the court. To move the court is the motion, right? So you'll hear more say something like, you don't do motions, you do affidavits. The affidavits, I got my affidavit, they got 10 days to respond. And don't respond in 10 days, put a lien on it, whatever. Where are they getting this stuff from?
That's right.
You see, so there's a lot of confusion in that sense. Yes.
Islam, I would like to request, can you read the plea to the nations, Prophet Mujib?
Yes.
Because it's near talk about something about national.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Plea,
Yes.
Prophet's plea to the nation.
Mm-hmm.
That's on page 7 of the Moorish literature. It says, our divine and national movement stands for the specific grand principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and I, the prophet, am applying to all loyal, faithful Moors, members, and the American citizens to help me in my great uplifting acts of uplifting fallen humanity among the Asiatic race and nation. For I have suffered much and severely in the past through misunderstanding of what the movement was dedicated to. It is the great God Allah alone that guides the destiny of this divine and national movement. I know all true American citizens are identified by national descent names to answer and apply to the free national constitution of this free national republic of the United States of America. That's why I am calling on all true national citizens to help me morally and financially in my great work I am doing to help this national government, for without a free national name, with a descent flag of your forefathers, there is not a national divine title of the government in which we live. This is from your true and divine prophet unto all American and foreign sympathizers, Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
That's right.
That's right. So you see, he said all true national citizens.
That's right.
He didn't say all true Aboriginal, Indigenous, Almaroc nationals.
Right. They twisting it.
Yeah, citizen is in there.
Right. They leaving out they what the main
right
wording supposed to be.
Right. National, exactly. National is used as the adjective
right
to describe
the
citizen.
The citizen.
It's not used as the noun.
Right.
The identity in this context. So, and as I always say, in nationality law, in United States nationality law, all citizens are classified as nationals, not all nationals are citizens.
That's right.
Because you can be like a resident of the Samoan Islands.
Mm-hmm.
They're nationals, but they're not citizens. There's certain things that they cannot do because they do not have citizenship.
Yes, I'm sure. Right.
So when they say, right here, you see a lot more saying, I'm a national.
Right.
So you saying certain things that they can't do, right? When
if they deny themselves of their citizenship.
That's right.
That's what they're doing when they say they're national. They deny themselves of
right.
citizens.
It's backwards.
But they don't know that.
Right. And the dialogue is to try to make it seem like citizens are subjects.
Right.
Or less than, or slaves or whatever.
Right.
And there's nothing in any legal dictionary that says that they are slaves or anything of that nature.
Right.
Now, it will say subject to duties and laws and things of that nature, but that doesn't make, they're trying to use it in the context that they're a subject to a sovereign. You see what I'm saying? The concept that there's some sovereign that tells them what to do, and it's misunderstanding, miscommunication of it. So that's all it is.
They can be getting themselves messed up every time.
That's all it is. Yeah. So we have to have a clear understanding of those terms.
Right.
Right. And it's by way of that we can best fulfill our functions as Moorish Americans.
That's right.
Right? Because it says on your nationality card, I'm a citizen of the USA.
That's right.
That's what it says on the nationality card. So we have to know exactly what citizen means, right? In the definition of citizen, it will speak about being a member of a free political community, right? That's really what it is. That's really what it is. Any other questions? All right. So I thank each and every one of you for allowing me to demonstrate, exercise my measure of understanding at this time. And without further ado, I yield the floor to my grand governor, Robert Stone.
Yes, Lord.
Islam.
Islam.
Islamism. I rise with all eternal praise to the great God of the universe for allowing us to be here today. Giving honors to his holy divine prophet, Lord Ali, the old author, brought us this great gospel, Islam.
Islam.
Gave his life a willing sacrifice for the uplifting and fallen humanity. Giving honors to the brother Nazarite who paved the way for our founders, John Harvard, the way for Jesus. Giving honors to the Honorable Marcus Mosaic God, Islam.
Islam.
Giving honors to the Chief Supreme Grand National, Chief Supreme Resurrection, Grand Resurrection, Islam. Timothy Dingle, hyphenated Ali, Islam. For all of his great works, and to his other half, Supreme Grand Novelist, Islam. Mother Wisdom, Mother Ruth, Mother Louise Dingle, Divine Minister of the Gospel. For all of their great works and for resurrecting the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam.
Islam.
Special honors to their families, special honors to their children, special honors to the Chief Supreme Grand National Secretary, Diane Dingle, Islam.
Islam.
I ask that Allah continue to heal her, to bless her, Islam, and to guide her, Islam, as well as bless the family. Give honors to the Moman and the nobles who place in their hands and their trust in our Supreme Grand Governor, Sage Master Jerome Graham Bay, Divine Minister of the Gospel, Islam.
Islam.
Honors to the Moman and the nobles who place in their hands and their trust in our Supreme Grand Sheikest Grand Governor, Margaret Thompson Bay, Divine Minister of the Gospel.
Islam.
God woman in the city of the sun that man called Heliopolis, Islam. Giving honors to all the faithful Muslims, Islam.
Islam.
Giving honors to our brothers and sisters in the city of the sun, following the prophet to a destiny that is not uncertain or unknown. Giving honors to our sisters and brothers in New York, Islam.
Islam.
Honors to Sheikah's Lisa Wahlberg Neal, Sheikah's Diana Herwood Bay and the family there, Islam.
Islam.
Honors to the Moors here on this location, Islam.
Islam.
Honors to our Sunday school teacher, Islam. Sheikh Shamil, doing a marvelous job, Islam. Again, honors to the half sister Ness, Islam. Honors to the family, Islam. Special honors to humanity, Islam. Special honors to Sheikah's is here today, Fatima Muhammad Bey,
Islam.
It's a blessing to see you,
Islam.
Islam. Giving honors to our Sheikah's, humanity, and Rena Stevens Bay, Islam.
Islam.
And to the other half, Islam, and the family, Islam. Honors to Grand Sheikh William Jackson Bay,
Islam.
Honors to the Assistant Grand Governor, Sheikh Robert Page Gill, Islam. Honors to the Resurrector, Raleigh Mack Bay, Islam.
Islam.
To your family, Mo. Honors to my son, Islam, Nelson Stone Mill.
Islam.
Honors to the Grand Sheikh, Assistant Grand Sheikh, Sheikh Brother William. The Sheikh went ill, Islam.
Islam.
Allah continue to bless him. Blessed to see his daughter out here today, Islam. Honors to my other half, honors to my eldest son, honors to all Muslims, Buddhists, Confucians, Christians, etc. Islam.
Islam.
Praise Allah. Islam. Yeah, that's a great Sunday school, Islam. Getting those lessons, understanding what exactly the Prophet brought us, Islam. He said that he brought us everything it takes to save the nation. Now take it and save yourselves, Islam.
Islam.
But it's like when he gave us these two small books, Islam, we have to do like the angel instructed the revelator in the book of Revelation, Islam.
Islam.
So we're given these two small books, we have to take them and eat them, Islam.
Islam.
And in our mouth it's sweet, sweet as honey, but in the belly it's bitter, Islam.
Islam.
So we're talking about the belly of the mind. That's what we have to get understanding. We have to digest what the prophet gave us, Islam.
That's right.
He told the Moors during his era time, he said it would take you Moors 50 years to figure out what I brought you, Islam.
Islam.
So the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America says all authority and rights of the publishing of this pamphlet in 1927, Islam.
Islam.
But then it went out to the public in 1928, Islam. So we're blessed, Moors, we're thrice blessed to have what the Supreme Grand Resurrection, the Chief Supreme Grand Resurrection did, his works, Islam,
Islam.
and helping to unfold this demonstration even more to help us get a clear understanding, Islam.
Islam.
Because 50 years, 1928 brings us to 1978. It's like time to teach. And so it also fulfills the prophecy where the prophet said that the supreme law will be handed down unto you later.
Islam.
So what the Moman demonstrated was very important, talking about the society, explaining that, and how out from a society, a government, a nation could be born. The founder knew and understood that. So that's why at the first convention, he wrapped those two young Moorish Americans, Islam. He wrapped the young sister in the Moorish flag and the young brother in the American flag. Islam. And he said, I hereby declare that you are a nation of people. Islam. Because, see, the secrets of futurity were open to his view because he was following his father God Allah, Islam, through the subject of religion, Islam.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And, you know, we a religious society, and we just got to, you know, break that demonstration down, Islam. So we went to, the chapter that the founder put in there, the peace of society dependent upon justice, Islam.
Islam.
But then we also have the other chapter following that, social duties, Islam. You know, social duties, the first verse in there, which actually precedes justice. This is chapter 30. The prophet says, when thou considerest thy wants, when thou beholdest thy imperfections, acknowledge his goodness, O son of humanity, who honored thee with humanity, endowed thee with speech, and placed thee in society.
Islam.
To receive and confer reciprocal helps and mutual obligations, protection from injuries, thy enjoyments of the comforts and the pleasures of life, all these thou owest to the assistance of others, and couldst not enjoy but in the bands of society.
Islam.
So society is very important. So it's like a Sunday school teacher bringing that hammer, Islam, you know. So, you know, you functioning as a religious society, Islam. And, you know, that's very important. Understanding that ecclesiastic aspect to the movement is extremely important. That's the divine aspect, Islam. That's really where our salvation lies. You know, the national, in terms of, you know, operating out nationally, Islam. That's why the prophet teaches us in chapter 48 that he says in chapter 48 that the prophet has charters to issue out to every state, Islam, throughout the United States, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Islam. So, you know, and there's a lot for us to digest with what the prophet is teaching, Islam. But throughout the states, that's national,
Islam.
Throughout each state. And each state originally, there was a sovereign state, Islam. And all the citizens that were part of that state made up the popular sovereignty. They were sovereign citizens, Islam, of that state, Islam.
That's right.
But see, some of the states gave up. They was more sovereign during the time of the Articles of Confederation than they were during the Constitution, the federal Constitution, Islam. They had relinquished some of that power, Islam, and gave it to a federal government, Islam. Because see, that was one of the demonstrations about the old government. You know, this said government has been existing, Islam. We know it goes back to the Confederation. It goes back before that to the Union, Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And that union go back to the true union, which was the Algonquin, Islam. So, you know, this demonstration has just gone through successive evolutions,
That's right.
Islam. But in that 1787, the Constitution of 1787, that's what, you know, brought more power to a centralized federal government, Islam. So those are the type of things that we see. So Noble Drew Ali, you know, being a master, you know, he's trying to place us and prepare us for this plane of reality in which we find ourselves now, Islam. So, you know, and that's what he did the way that the prophet taught, you know, corresponds right with law on that, Islam. You know, even when he gave us the Quran, Islam, it's a book of what? Islamism. That's right.
Hey, Grandpa.
Yes, sir.
I know you went back. You just said that national gave up the power to the federal, right?
Right, the states.
The states.
The states yielded some of that power
Uh-huh.
to the federal government.
Right. Okay.
Man.
My question is when Lincoln was one part of the government, but you had John B. Hall, another part of the government. So what was his government called? He was
Okay.
the state or the federal too?
Who you talking about? Jefferson?
No, which one that got his name on the highway now? What's his
Jefferson
name?
Davis.
Jefferson Davis, right.
Right. Well, yeah, he was the Confederacy.
Okay.
Yeah, so what they did was, that's what he wanted to go back to. He wanted to go back, that's what they called him, a confederacy, using the language of the Articles of Confederation,
Okay. Yeah, that's what
saying that, they were sovereign people,
Right.
and they could secede from the Union.
Right. Okay.
Understand?
So him and Lincoln didn't see eye to eye.
Oh,
Not
no,
on that
no.
Union demonstration.
No, right.
Right. Okay.
Understand? Yeah. See, some of the master questions that, remained unanswered during the Civil War, Lincoln did the best he could to solve that, but he had to, wage a war
Right.
on that. Understand?
Right.
But with regards to, when those master questions were not satisfied, the great God Allah had to send us a holy divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali, for our salvation,
Right.
to save us from that condition. But yeah, that's what that demonstration was. The Union represented the federal government. Lincoln was the chief executive. Islam.
Right.
He would have been like, over ancient times, he'd been like great Tiberius. Islam.
Okay.
Supreme Justice, Chief Executive. Islam.
Right. He would have been overseas.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What would have been Jefferson?
Well, Jefferson, he would have been like one of those. Well, no, because he wasn't following Lincoln.
That's right.
So he was like that's what another name they call them, rebels.
Yeah. That's right.
They were rebels.
Yeah. Right.
Islam. They got a high school in Durham called Southern High School, and their motto is the rebels.
That's right.
Islam. So, yeah, so they rebelled against the Union.
Ruffians.
Islam. That's right. Yeah, they rebelled against the Union. Islam. But that's what the Holy Prophet brought us. That Quran, a Mohammedan book of faith, it contains both ecclesiastical and secular laws. So just like the Sunday school teacher was demonstrating, that ecclesiastic, that's that religious law. Islam.
So,
That's where we, have our salvation at. That's where the prophet brought us. The secular law is dealing with, worldly Islam. That's more on the level of civil law Islam. So yeah, the prophet, and he covered both in his works. He covered, a Jewish society and a religious society, Islam. That's where the government in and of itself is a religious government. Islam governing us. Islam.
that's all.
But yeah, man, that was a great lesson today. Islam. Moors asked a question. I'm so happy to see Sheikah's Fatima, because this is the sister, she's a law woman. This is the sister, she the one who brought Federal Directive 15 to us. Islam. You know what I'm saying? She woke us up to that demonstration. And all of that's very important with regards to, like what the Sunday school teacher is saying, proclaiming who we are, making that known in everything we do. Nationality is not just a card. It's not just, looking Moorish, Islam, seeing a picture, trying to imitate what's in a picture, Islam, but it's about that character, Islam. That's what nationality is, the quality of character, which arises from the fact of a person belonging to a nation or a state. But we know the nation that the prophet is bringing us into is a divine nation. Islam.
That's right.
Islamism. Islam. So that's what he says in chapter 45. We got a divine origin. Islam. Right. He's teaching us all that we have to go through. In the religious aspect, all of that is, we have to internalize this gospel. That's the only way we can truly be citizens.
Right.
You know, to fully go through the resurrection. Islam. Resurrected means being raised from the dead.
That's right, man.
And that's what we fully have to go through. Islam. So it don't happen in one day. It don't happen in 1 year. It might not happen in 10 years. Islam. But we got to be consistent with it. Islam. That's all. We got to be consistent, be constant with it. Beware those five wicked ones. Islam. Trying to kick us out of the garden with them. Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. Islam. And all of the characteristics and things that go along with that. Islam.
That's right.
So, we just have to be mindful that, those characteristics are inside of us. Islam. But whatever we feed gets stronger. If we feed that lower self, guess what? It's going to get stronger. But if we feed the higher self, Islam, we get stronger. Right? Where the prophet intends us to be. Islam?
Islam, I just want, when you the brother was reading from the literature and you talk about how the prophet said that when you would see this for 50 years,
right?
That's a generation,
right?
So it's a repetition thing with the divine and the principles is very repetitious so that it can become a part of you and literally become a part of your DNA, right?
That's right.
So then you see a next generation out, if we living by these principles, you should be able to see that manifestation in that next generation.
That's right.
And so on and so forth. So that's one aspect. I know it's many levels to it because you can unpack, it's so many, you can peel back so many, but that is one aspect that shows up is generationally, if Moors are being good Moors, true Moors, and that then 50 years from now, in the next generation, you should be able to see that manifestation and so on and so forth.
That's right, that's right. And that's what the prophet said. He said, the third, fourth, fifth generation, we see the fruit of his work. So DNA, you're talking about, microcosmic level, in the blood, Islam. And the spirit is in the blood, Islam. So that's definitely where the work is being done within, Islam. And when it's complete, that's when we see the outward manifestation of Islam. But yeah, Moors, it's a blessing. What I'm gonna do, told the Sunday school teacher what I was gonna start doing is just like making some copies from different records for the Moors to study. You can bring it up on a Sunday school. Some of these are records that you may have already seen, already had. This particular record is from Brother Jose Pimentel Bay's book, Islam, Othello's Children. Islam. Right. I know you had to get away from me.
Somebody borrow it?
I always buy.
No, don't let them borrow your books.
I don't know
Man
who
said,
bought
don't let nobody get your records, man.
Yeah, I turned my back and I turn back around, it's gone.
Yeah.
Don't nobody know who got it, so.
Islam.
But always well.
Yeah. But the subject here is on nationality, Islam. What's in a name, nomenclature, nationality, societal status, Islam. And it's from a couple of chapters in the book. And it's mainly touching on like the Dred Scott case, Islam. Dred Scott case is one of the biggest cases dealing with citizenship, Islam. The question of citizenship. And one thing that's real important about what the prophet brought us and how the Sunday school teacher demonstrated today, and what the Mo man Timothy Dingle-Ill hyphenated Noble stressed about society. The doctor spoke about nationality law, right? And he's right on it. Well, according to the State Department, one of the definitions of nationality law is citizenship. Islam. And with citizenship and nationality law, they teach that the way that you truly become a citizen, Islam, you must belong to a society.
Right.
You must be a member of a society to be a citizen.
That's
Islam.
number one.
And that's one of the demonstrations that came out of the Dred Scott case. And that was one of the things the judges pointed. They said that, they would not recognize, like we talk about today out here, like you got like black society.
Right.
Islam.
Right.
And even within that, you got high black society, low black society, elite black society, etc. But according to the Dred Scott case,
That's right.
that don't exist. Islam.
That's
They
right.
operate under what the prophet talk about granted privilege.
Mm.
They got a granted privilege to exist.
That's right, boy.
It can be taken away from them. Islam.
That's right.
But because they, they helping to feed the system. Islam.
That's right.
So there's some use for that demonstration.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Islam,
Part of
God.
the slaveholders. Islam.
That's right.
But see, according to that Dred Scott case, and we got a lot of people upset about that Dred Scott case. We tend to say a black person has no rights, a white man is bound to respect. A lot of people get very angry about that.
That's right.
Islam.
So what now?
When you say to people that a black person has no rights, that a white man is bound to respect, some people get very upset about it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Islam.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's because they have not digested the truth that black according to science means this.
Yeah.
Islam.
Right.
Civilly and civically dead. Islam.
That's right.
So
That's right.
nationality is the order of the day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And name is very important. That's why the prophet, I gave Grand Chief William Jackson Bay honor, because he had distinguished between Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws
Mhm.
and the question in our questionnaire.
That's
Islam.
right. That's right.
And Act 6 says that these names,
These names.
talk about Negro, Black, and Colored Ethiopian, were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779. But in our questionnaire, we have another year, 1774.
Mm.
And by 1774, they were marks.
Mm.
Right. That's the difference.
Right.
Right.
Islam. These
Registration.
marks, but then these marks became
Right.
these legal statuses,
Right.
Became a legislative act.
which lasted ED
Mhm.
until 1865,
That's right.
during the time of slavery.
You can carry on from 1865 to now.
So it's unconstitutional.
Mhm.
Right.
If it was supposed to be ended in 1865, that's why the prophet always stressed our people clinging on the names and principles that are what?
Unconstitutional. Right.
Islam. Because the Constitution, that's why some people look at the Moorish Americans and say, y'all just talking about slavery from 1779, 1865. What about before that? We're talking about constitutionally sanctioned slavery.
That's right, man.
Right.
We know there was slavery before 1779.
That's
That's
right.
There was slavery before 1774.
That's long.
The Portuguese had introduced the horrid practice of the slave trade in 1441.
Mm-hmm.
Islam. So we know about that, but it's what the prophet is specifically focusing on. That's what he's trying to get us to focus on.
That's right.
It's like the Sunday school teacher said, he's raising us up to be vanguards. Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors of the law. Islam.
So,
To help and aid and assist fallen humanity. Islam.
that's right.
But boys, I'm gonna just say Islam is peace. Beautiful that everybody can make it out today. Islam. On Sunday school day. Any other questions or announcements?
Islam, I just want to make one comment. We know this, but when I try to explain to our unconscious Asiatics that they're not citizens because they're not, they don't proclaim their nationality,
Right.
and then when I show them proof that every 50 years you got to get somebody to sign just so you can vote.
Right.
And then I tell them that Noble John Lee, way back then, was voting.
That's right.
Way before even decided to let our Asiatic brothers and sisters vote.
Right.
So there's proof right there
Mm-hmm.
that you got to be a citizen.
Yeah. That's fine. Absolutely.
Got to.
Absolutely. That's and the prophet stressed that that's how we have to receive our divine rights as citizens.
Mm-hmm.
He said they place their trust upon issues formed by their forefathers.
That's right.
So the trust is like what nation, what is your nationality? What nation do you belong to?
Mm-hmm.
And then we know how to deal with you. Understand? According to that. He said if Italians, Greeks, Japanese, Turks, Arabians are forced to proclaim their free national name and religion,
Mm-hmm.
Islam, before the Constitution of the United States of America, is no more than right that we do the same. Islam. So somebody's playing by the right rules and somebody's playing by the wrong rules. If the law, one of the most important aspects of law is equity. Islam. That means equal justice. Islam. And yeah, that's what the Moors want. We want equal justice. We don't want to shirk our responsibilities.
That's right.
Islam.
That's right.
We want to be equal in the sight of the law. We want to do what we're supposed to do to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
Islam. And the prophet is the one who brought the remedy. Islam. According to what was needed in this time. Islam.
That's right.
Islam. That's the Lord. Islam. The most with that, I'm going to say Islam and peace.
Oh.
Praise Allah.